My husband and his three sisters were stealing money from my accounts while I was babysitting their kids. Life had always been a carefully orchestrated climb for me. I'd worked tirelessly to reach where I was, a 34-year-old marketing director living in New York, pulling in $340,000 a year. Success wasn't just my goal. It was my shield, my proof that I could thrive without needing anyone to prop me up. And for the longest time, I believed that being self-sufficient was enough. Until I met Logan. We crossed paths at a real estate conference, of all places. I wasn't even supposed to be there. A colleague had dropped out last minute. Logan was magnetic in a way I couldn't ignore. He had this effortless charm, a presence that made everyone gravitate toward him. We clicked instantly, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to think about something beyond my career. It wasn't long before we got married. It felt like the perfect union, his charisma and my ambition, two halves of a power couple. But things took a turn when I met his family. Logan's three sisters, Rachel, Megan, and Claire, were a unit unto themselves. All of them were divorced, raising kids on their own, and seemingly bonded by a shared disdain for anything that reminded them of their failed relationships. From the moment they laid eyes on me, their smiles never quite reached their eyes. At first, I chalked it up to unfamiliarity. New people often take time to warm up, but their attitudes didn't soften. Instead, I started noticing the subtle digs, comments about how lucky I was to have Logan, how every woman dreams of a family and should prioritize it over a career. There was envy in their words, a resentment that simmered just below the surface. It wasn't lost on me that my success stood in stark contrast to their circumstances. Logan seemed blind to it all, brushing off my concerns with a laugh and a quick kiss on the forehead. As the months passed, their presence in our lives grew. Rachel's car broke down, and Logan volunteered my weekend to drive her kids to their activities. Megan needed advice on a business proposal, and somehow I ended up drafting it. Claire's babysitter canceled, and our dinner plans transformed into a last-minute childcare session. They had a way of framing their needs as emergencies, and Logan's insistence on family first made it nearly impossible to refuse. Then came the subtle manipulations from Logan himself. He said one night, "We've been so busy with work and everything else. Maybe we should spend more time focusing on family values. It's important to them." At first, I thought he meant our future family, but it became clear he was talking about his sisters. They had woven themselves into every corner of our lives, and now Logan wanted me to accommodate them even more. It wasn't just the demands on my time. It was the unspoken expectation that my career, my independence, should take a back seat. Logan's subtle shifts in attitude began to unsettle me. The man who once celebrated my drive and ambition now seemed to view them as obstacles to some idealized version of family harmony. The tipping point came late one evening when I was reconciling our joint bank account. It wasn't something I usually did. We had an accountant for that. But a sudden instinct had me scrolling through the transactions. That's when I noticed them, regular transfers to Rachel, Megan, and Claire. The amounts weren't small either. Thousands of dollars, funneled quietly over months. My stomach twisted as I stared at the screen. The Logan I thought I knew, the partner who had vowed to build a future with me, was siphoning our shared resources without so much as a conversation. Questions swirled in my mind. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't he told me? And most importantly, what was he hiding? I closed the laptop, my pulse hammering in my ears. Logan had just walked into the room, oblivious to what I discovered. For the first time since we'd met, I felt a crack in the foundation of our relationship, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far worse. The morning after discovering Logan's secret transfers, I couldn't look at him the same way. I wanted answers, but his breezy demeanor made confrontation feel impossible. Instead, I chose to observe, hoping to understand the extent of what was happening before making my move. That decision quickly unraveled my carefully controlled life. Logan's sisters were everywhere. Within weeks, Rachel had moved into a house just 3 blocks from ours, followed closely by Megan and Claire. Logan explained it as keeping the family close, but I couldn't ignore the familiar pang of unease. When I asked how they managed to afford such prime real estate, Logan gave a vague answer about helping them secure loans. I didn't press further, but the uneasy feeling in my gut grew stronger. Then the requests started piling on. Rachel needed someone to pick her kids up from school while she interviewed for jobs. Megan wanted help planning her daughter's birthday party, which turned into a full weekend of hosting and cleanup. Claire had a medical bill she couldn't cover, and Logan didn't hesitate to offer assistance. Each favor snowballed into hours of my time or significant financial commitments. Logan framed it as family solidarity, but it felt more like I was being recruited into a never-ending cycle of dependency. As I dug deeper, I noticed patterns that left me cold. Rachel's new house? Fully paid for, with funds drawn from an account Logan and I had opened together. Megan's loan for her business venture? Another hefty withdrawal. Even Claire's medical bills had been covered through our finances. I realized the life I thought we were building together was being siphoned off to sustain his sisters. I tried addressing the issue with Logan, but every conversation circled back to the same refrain: family helps family. When I pushed back, he dismissed me as selfish or accused me of looking down on his sisters. The Logan I thought I knew, the partner who once celebrated my independence, was now using guilt and obligation as tools to undermine me. One evening, as I combed through our accounts, the full extent of the damage came into focus. Over the past year, Logan had drained nearly all our savings. The numbers stared back at me like a taunt, mocking my naivety. My emergency fund, my contributions to our joint account, even portions of my retirement savings, all gone. It wasn't just the financial betrayal that stung, it was the realization that I'd been complicit in my own exploitation. By allowing Logan to brush aside my concerns, I'd given him the space to erode everything I'd worked so hard to build. And yet, confronting him felt like stepping into a minefield. Every time I questioned his actions, he turned the conversation back on me, painting my frustration as a lack of respect for his family. The breaking point came when Rachel showed up unannounced with her kids in tow. She needed me to babysit, so she could attend a last-minute event, and Logan had already agreed on my behalf. As I watched her walk out the door without a second glance, something in me snapped. This wasn't family helping family. This was a system designed to strip me of my autonomy, one favor at a time. That night, I confronted Logan with everything I'd uncovered. His reaction was predictably defensive, but it wasn't his words that shook me. It was his complete lack of remorse. He genuinely believed he was in the right, that our shared resources were an extension of his family's needs. When I demanded to know why he hadn't consulted me before draining our accounts, he dismissed it as a practical decision. As the argument escalated, Logan turned the tables. He accused me of being too focused on money, of putting my career above our family. His words cut deep, but they also crystallized something I'd been avoiding. Logan and I didn't share the same vision for our life together. What he saw as family loyalty, I saw as betrayal. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for a man who prioritized everyone else over me. When I returned to our accounts the next morning, the final blow landed. Every last dollar was gone. Logan had emptied the remaining balance overnight. My heart sank as the gravity of my situation hit me. I'd allowed myself to be drawn into his world, and now I was left with nothing to show for it but a hollow shell of a marriage and a dwindling sense of trust. I had reached my breaking point. The empty bank account and Logan's indifference to my frustration had pushed me into survival mode. I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. Something much deeper and more sinister was happening. It wasn't just about money. It was about control, manipulation, and deceit. While rummaging through our files one evening, I came across a document I didn't recognize. At first glance, it seemed innocuous, a standard loan agreement. But as I read further, my stomach sank. It was for $350,000, taken out against my name with a signature that looked eerily similar to mine. My mind raced. I'd never seen this document before, let alone signed it. The dates and details suggested it had been processed months ago, during a time when Logan had insisted on handling some boring paperwork for our joint finances. That discovery set off a chain reaction. The more I dug, the more discrepancies I uncovered. There were forged documents, suspicious transactions, and even correspondence that implicated Logan in what could only be described as a well-coordinated scam. It became clear that his sisters weren't just beneficiaries of his generosity. They were co-conspirators. Rachel, Megan, and Claire had always seemed disorganized and dependent, but their veneer of helplessness was beginning to crack. One night, while I worked late, the car alarm outside jolted Logan from the couch. He darted outside to check on the noise, leaving his laptop unlocked on the dining table. Something about the timing felt off, so I couldn't resist peeking at the screen. What I found stopped me cold. There was an open group chat, just Logan and his sisters. The most recent messages were filled with incriminating details about their plans. They mocked me, discussing how I'd unknowingly signed forged documents, and even joked about how easily Logan had distracted me with small talk while they drained our accounts. Rachel detailed how they'd use me as the scapegoat for their financial schemes, calling me their perfect cover. Claire chimed in, confident they'd wrap things up before I could figure out the truth. Their tone was dismissive, almost mocking, as if they'd already won. Feeling cornered, I reached out to Olivia, a trusted friend and a lawyer with a knack for uncovering hidden truths. I'd hesitated to involve her before, not wanting to drag anyone else into the mess my life had become. But now I needed her expertise. Olivia's advice was clear: gather evidence and prepare for a clean break. She urged me to document everything, every text, transaction, and interaction that could prove their scheme. Taking her words to heart, I began compiling a dossier. It was grueling work, combing through months of bank statements, emails, and photos of physical documents. Each new discovery painted a clearer picture of the betrayal. Logan and his sisters weren't just using me. They were actively dismantling my life to further their own. The final straw came late one evening when Logan and his sisters decided to have a casual get-together at our house in the backyard. Logan was manning the grill while Rachel, Megan, and Claire sat chatting at the patio table. I joined them initially, trying to keep up appearances despite the swirling doubts in my mind. They laughed and joked, seemingly carefree, but the undercurrent of tension I felt never left me. As the evening wore on, I faked a headache and excused myself, saying it was late and I needed rest. Before leaving, I intentionally left my phone on the windowsill near the table, with the recorder running. I pretended it was an absent-minded mistake, hoping none of them would notice. A while later, I returned under the guise of searching for my phone. As I approached, they had already fallen into more private and relaxed conversation, no longer guarded by my presence. I grabbed the phone, thanked them distractedly, and made my way back to the house. Inside, my heart raced as I locked the bedroom door and played the recording. Their voices came through clearly. What I heard chilled me to the core. They were openly mocking me, recounting how they had manipulated me into signing forged documents. Megan laughed about how easy it was to sell Emily on those papers, while Claire bragged about how Logan kept me distracted with fake charm while they executed their plans. Rachel called me the perfect mark, someone naive enough to be exploited without suspecting a thing. Their casual cruelty and the gloating in their voices made my blood boil. It was more than just betrayal. It was a calculated effort to dismantle my life and leave me with nothing. Fury and determination surged within me. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. They had turned me into a pawn, and it was time to take back control of the game. The morning after listening to the damning recording, I woke with a singular focus. I had to escape. There was no saving this relationship, no fixing the mess Logan and his sisters had created. I had to protect myself and salvage what was left of my life. But leaving wasn't just a matter of walking out the door. It had to be calculated. I spent the next week gathering everything I could. Every financial document, email, and message that could expose their fraudulent schemes went into a secured folder. Olivia had been a lifeline, helping me understand how to protect myself legally. She suggested I make a clean break and prepare for the fallout. Her calm but firm advice became my anchor as I carefully planned my exit. Around this time, a job opportunity arose in Boston. It couldn't have come at a better moment. The role was challenging, well-paying, and most importantly, far away from Logan and his toxic family. Accepting it felt like the first step toward reclaiming my independence. I didn't tell Logan about the offer. Instead, I quietly began making arrangements to relocate, timing everything so that my departure would be swift and definitive. On the surface, I maintained a semblance of normalcy. I went through the motions, pretending to be the oblivious partner while covertly dismantling the ties that bound me to Logan. I transferred my remaining funds to a private account, canceled joint credit cards, and even rented a small apartment in Boston under a friend's name to avoid raising suspicion. Each step felt like progress, a small victory against the web of deceit they'd spun around me. The day of my planned escape, I acted as if it were any other day. Logan left for a meeting, giving me a crucial window to finalize my preparations. Olivia met me at a nearby coffee shop to go over the final details of the legal actions we'd prepared. She reassured me that the evidence I'd gathered was more than enough to expose Logan and his sister's schemes. As I left the coffee shop, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Rachel in the group chat I'd uncovered on Logan's laptop. The tone was panicked, a stark contrast to their usual smugness. "Have you heard about the investigation?" she asked. Claire responded seconds later. "We need to meet. This could blow everything." My chest tightened as I realized what was happening. The wheels were already in motion. Returning home, I noticed Logan pacing in the backyard with his sisters. Their usual composure was gone, replaced by frantic gestures and heated whispers. It was clear they'd been caught off guard. I could almost hear the gears turning in their heads as they tried to piece together how their perfect plan had unraveled. Logan stormed into the house minutes later, his face a mask of fury. He cornered me in the kitchen, his voice low but laced with venom. "You think you're smart," he hissed. "Everything is in your name. If this falls apart, you're the one who'll pay." His threat hung in the air, a final attempt to assert control. But for the first time, I felt no fear. I knew I held the truth, and with Olivia's guidance, I was ready to fight back. Logan's threat echoed in my mind as I moved through the final steps of my escape. But it wasn't fear driving me anymore, it was resolve. The evidence I had gathered was airtight, and Olivia had already submitted everything to the authorities. It was only a matter of time before the consequences of their actions caught up with them. A week later, it all came crashing down. The investigation unearthed the full extent of Logan and his sister's financial crimes: forgery, fraud, and embezzlement. Their accounts were frozen, properties seized, and their once smug confidence replaced by frantic scrambling. Logan tried to spin a narrative that he was the victim of a misunderstanding, but the evidence left no room for doubt. The coordinated efforts of his sisters only deepened their downfall, exposing the calculated nature of their schemes. For me, the legal battle was grueling but necessary. The divorce process was swift, thanks to the mountain of evidence in my favor. I walked away with my dignity intact and the knowledge that their manipulative empire had crumbled. It was a small but significant victory in reclaiming my life. Moving to Boston felt like shedding an old skin. The fresh start I had planned was finally a reality. My new role came with more responsibility and a well-deserved raise. But more importantly, it gave me a chance to rebuild on my terms. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control, free from the shadow of Logan's deceit and his family's toxicity. Of course, they didn't let go easily. Logan and his sisters made half-hearted attempts to contact me, leaving voicemails and sending emails that ranged from pleas for reconciliation to veiled threats. I deleted every message without a second thought, refusing to let them pull me back into their web. The satisfaction of watching their downfall was enough closure for me. One evening, as I sat by the window of my new apartment, the city lights twinkling below, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The pain, betrayal, and chaos of the past year felt distant, like a chapter in someone else's story. But it was mine, and I owned every part of it. Sharing my experience wasn't just cathartic, it was a way to reach other women who might find themselves trapped in similar situations. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as I resolved to turn my scars into strength and my story into a beacon for others.